something which is coming from outside. Something from inside, it should not be rejected, right? But what happens? The regulatory system is gone because the immune system is not working. And so these people will have a lot of different type of autoimmune diseases as well, correct? So a functional immune system is very, very essential. Now again, unlike other physiological systems, in the immune system there are two concepts which are pretty darn unique. One is to differentiate between self and non-self. Immune system can figure it out whether, see, if I take my RBCs and re-inject into my body, there will be no immune response. There will be no anti-RBCs antibodies if these are mine. But if I take somebody else's RBCs whose blood group is different, it will be rejected. It will be recognized as a foreign and it is going to be rejected. So if you look at the transplantation is really not a surgical problem. It is an immunological problem because putting the plumbing together is no big deal at all. As a matter of fact, there was a guy in my lab, he could transplant a rat kidney in 3 minutes. And it is, trust me, it is far more difficult than transplant the kidney in the human being because the capillaries are really, really small. But what problem is, once you put this kidney in or heart or piece of the skin, it doesn't really matter. It is then going to be recognized as foreign. And once it is foreign, the immune system is going to throw it out, right? No other physiological system in our body has this recognition between self and non-self. And the other thing is the concept of immunological memory. I really said it in the beginning, in the adaptive immunity, that if I would have been vaccinated against smallpox, I will never have smallpox again. I can have any other disease. That means there is some kind of memory in the immune system, right? That it can recognize that, okay, I've been exposed to it, and now I have to be ready for it. But this memory, if you see another physiological system in our body, that is the nervous system. Nervous system also has a memory. This is how you guys can remember things and write your answers in the exams, correct? But the way this memory is stored in the nervous system and in the immune system is totally different. See, in the nervous system, we have different folders. People who are working with the computers know. So if you look at me, my face, structure of my face is going to be in one folder. My eyes would be in another folder. My accent would be in another folder. How bad I smell is going to be still in another folder. See what I'm saying? Correct? But at the given time, all these folders will be brought together and you can put the memory together. This is why, when you're sitting in the exams and say, oh God, I know the answer, it is not coming to me. Or you see some person and say, yeah, face looks familiar, but I really don't know the name of this person. This is why, because there's a problem with the retrieval process, how you are bringing this information together. And it is really never defective. In all such cases, just relax a little bit. It is like a traffic jam on the highway. And once you relax it, you will see that all these folders are going to come together, correct? I'm going to show you how the memory is in the immune system. See, this is a very simple graph, if you follow me. So what we are doing is, this is coming from a rabbit. This is a mammal, so our immune system, the mammalian immune system, is very, very similar. So on the vertical axis, I am measuring specific antibodies. So what I mean by this, that if I inject poliovirus here, now I am seeing how much anti-poliovirus antibodies have been made. Follow me? Right? And these are the days after infection. So see, if this animal is kind of a immunologically naive animal. It has never seen poliovirus before, okay? And we inject poliovirus for the first time. So you see, for about 6 days, there was no anti-polio antibodies at all, right? Then slowly, the quantity of the anti-polio antibodies started going up. It reaches to a certain level, and then it decreases, okay? This is what we call the primary response. So at 28 days, when it is back to the background level, we inject poliovirus again, not more, not less, same amount, identical amount of the poliovirus. And see what happens this time. There was no sort of latent period here. The immune response kicked in pretty fast, right? The anti-polio antibodies. Then if you really look at the slope of this graph and this graph, it shows you that the amount of anti-polio antibodies are going up much faster than they were going here, right? And they reached much higher, right? And then it came down far more slowly than it's here. It's not that you injected more antigen or less antigen. Now somebody can argue that what did you do? You screwed up the immune system of the rabbit by injecting polio virus. So okay, now let's take the rabies virus and inject it for the first time. So this animal has not seen the rabies virus before. And so I inject rabies virus here. And you see again this response is exactly like this response. And I think basically without going into the details, what happens is that there are memory cells. There was lymphocytes that I told you, B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. There are memory B cells, there are memory T cells. And their number goes up. So there are more cells which are making more antibodies. And this is how we differentiate. So you see, this is why when you get vaccinated, in some cases, you need the booster dose. This is in order to have the optimum immunity, right? In other cases, you don't need the second dose at all. One example that I can think of is live polio vaccine. It is called Sabin vaccine. You know, this is a live virus and it's attenuated, so it cannot cause the disease. You put a drop on the candy and you let the kids take it, but here it's a live virus, so it is going to replicate and more virus will be made and it will give you the secondary immune response, right? Now, I already told you this, that what happens is that anything that interferes with the immune system, you are going to have the immunodeficiency disease, right? Now, here are the classification of the immunodeficiency diseases. Immunodeficiency diseases could be primary or they could be secondary. The primary are called inherited and the secondary are called acquired, okay? Now, primary are inherited. Obviously, this is in the gene. Sometimes this is the case and you can do nothing about it, right? But the secondary immunodeficiency, these are the three factors which can contribute to it. You know, people who have undergone transplantation, because I told you transplantation is really an immunological problem, it is not a surgical problem. So what do? In order to make sure that these people do not reject the transplanted organ, we suppress their immune system. Immunosuppressive drugs are really not good for you. I don't think we have solved the transplantation problem yet. We have long way to go. And when you suppress the immune system, you are going to get immunodeficiency. That will get the opportunistic infection, cancer rate, autoimmune diseases will go up, right? Nutritional deficiency. I think this we saw for the first time during the famine in Africa. And some of you have seen those children. The skin is directly glued to the bone. They have no muscles at all. And what we thought was that, okay, now if you feed these children well, then they are going to recover. They never recovered. So there are, never go to the extreme dieting in any way without consulting a physician. Because the nutritional deficiencies can cause immunodeficiency. And among all the infectious agents that I have known, no matter what other people tell you, the only infectious agent that we know which can cause immunodeficiency is HIV. There is no other virus which can cause immunodeficiency. This is the human immunodeficiency virus which can cause